Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how you can create your first webinar using WebinarJam. WebinarJam allows you to create and host live webinars with a live chat so that you can engage with your audience. It also comes with an email and SMS system so that you can send out notifications via email and SMS, and it allows you to do much more. Now, to jump in, the very first thing that we need to do is actually create our WebinarJam account. Now, if you go over to WebinarJam just by typing this into Google, what you will see is down here, we have to go ahead and just choose one of these plans. So if I go with Starter, this is going to charge me $39 per month straight from the bat. If I go with Basic, it's $79 per month. However, if you use my affiliate link in the description of this video, this affiliate link is going to allow you to get a 14-day trial to WebinarJam, where you can try this for 14 days for only $1. So you can follow along with this tutorial for just $1, try this out and see if you like the software before you actually commit and sign up to one of these plans. Now, the difference between these, the main differences are going to be shown right here. So the main differences between these plans is the amount of attendees you can have per webinar and also the maximum duration of this webinar. So as an example, if I go with the basic plan, we can have 500 attendees in each webinar, and the webinar duration can be a maximum of 2 hours. You are also going to be allowed a different amount of hosts with each plan. So if you have multiple people running the webinar, that is something to keep in mind as well. But the basic plan is absolutely fine, 2-hour maximum duration and 500 attendees. That is all I need for now. So let's go ahead and click on Start My $1 Trial. And then in here, we can first of all enter in your address. Once that has been entered, we want to click right here on Continue. And then as you can see, we have this discount applied. So the first 14 days for just $1. And then we can click on Continue. On this last screen, we just need to enter in our card information. And once that is entered, we can submit the payment right here and get started with this trial. So once we go through, these are the instructions that we need to get signed up. And essentially, WebinarJam is going to send us an email right here with our login information. So if we head over to that email, you can see I have an email right here from WebinarJam. And we just click here to set your password. We can then go through and set this password up. And just like that, we now have access to WebinarJam. So we can close down these other tabs right here. And you will notice on WebinarJam, we have these sections at the side. So we have the webinars tab where we can create and set up the webinars that we are going to run. Then in analytics, this is just going to show us the statistics for the webinars that we are running. So the visitors, how many people signed up. From the people that signed up, what's the show up rate? Like how many people attended live, how many people attended the replay. We can then see the engagement, how many people are live on the webinar now, how long they stay on the webinar, how long the webinars are usually running for, the ratings. And then down here, we can see the sales that we have made whilst we were live in the webinar, and also the sales from the replay room. In this section, registrants, this is where we can just see everybody who has signed up to the webinar. Of course, I don't have anybody in here now because I haven't set my webinar up yet. And then in training, you would assume that this is like video tutorials, but it just takes us to like an FAQ knowledge base. But let's go back into webinars right here. And this is where we can set up our first webinar. So this is just an example. If you want to, you can go in here and run a test. And this is going to take us through to the live room. So it's just going to launch the test webinar for us. And in here, we now have these different links. So the attendees is the link that you would send to people attending the webinar. The replays, so there are no replays for this webinar because we haven't gone live yet. But once we actually have the webinar up, you will be able to send the replay to people. And then presenters is the one that we want to join. So if we just copy this and we paste this in, it's going to take us over to this screen and just give us a last minute checklist. Then click on continue. And in here, we can now go through. I'm just going to put headphones on here as there was a little bit of noise coming through the computer. But essentially in this area, we can just check everything is connected up correctly. So the camera that we are using, the microphone that we are using, and then do you see and hear your signal? We can click on yes. And it's now going to take us into the webinar room. So this is how the webinar is going to look. We just have a quick tutorial right here of some of the features. These are the main controls that allow you to turn your webcam, your microphone on and off, share your screen, use the whiteboard. You get the idea. In here, this is the live broadcast section, so you can see a live view of your webinar. And then over on this area, this is going to be the chat section. So just like a live stream, if you have ever seen people streaming on Twitch or on YouTube, you will know that they have a live chat down the side, and it's going to be the exact same for your webinar. So there is going to be a slight delay of a few seconds. So if you say, for example, if you are ready to get started, type 1 in the chat. There might be a few seconds delay, but everything is going to show up right here. And then finally, to actually put the webinar live. So right now we are just in kind of like the testing mode right here, making sure everything is set up correctly. But as you can see, we are currently off air. So as soon as I click this telephone icon to go live, we can start this event. And just like this, my webinar is now live. So over here down this section with the chat, we can go in and we can start polls. So as an example, we can start a new poll right here. We can say, are you ready to get started? We can say like, yes and no. And then we can click preview, publish this. And it's then going to poll the chat, give them this poll in the chat, and they can click yes or no. We can also go into the offers section. We don't have this set up yet, but once we have an offer set up that you want to be selling through your webinar, all we have to do is click on start offer, and then we can publish this, and it's going to give your viewers an opportunity to purchase the product. We then have videos that you can drop in. We have files that you might want to drop in. We have slides, and you can create a new presentation right here. Upload the presentation from PowerPoint, Keynote, or PDF, and then you can present this on the webinar. And is there anything else? Okay, so if you want people to speak, you can get people to raise their hands and then jump into the webinar, and you can have attendees like on the webinar and speaking. And that is basically everything that we need from here. So I'm just going to end this webinar right now. And once this is finished, we can close this down. And I think I do need to adjust my camera settings, as yes, this has zoomed me out and kind of messed this up. So we should be back to normal now. One thing I will say about this is that's not an issue that you need to worry about as you are doing your webinars, like the camera messing up. It's simply because I'm using OBS at the same time. That's what causes the mess up there, but it's not really a cause for concern. So what we can now do is come back to the webinars area. And this was just a test. So let's go ahead and delete this, and we can set up our first webinar. So to do this, we go up to add webinar in this top right corner, and it's now going to ask if we want express configuration or full configuration. So I will show you the express configuration, but what I recommend doing is if this is your first time on WebinarJam, we can set up the full configuration right here, and then we just need to do this once, and then we can clone or duplicate all of the settings that we set up here. So it's not like you have to go in and do the full 10-minute configuration every time you want to put a webinar live. We can just duplicate these settings. But to start out, let's go with express configuration, which is the 60-second based on smart defaults. So we can click on this. And then all we need to select in this area is this a webinar that we want to go live right now? Or is this a webinar that we want to schedule for later? So live now is pretty self-explanatory. We just go straight live. So let's schedule this for later. So the first thing that we need to do in here is set up these basic settings, which is just the webinar name, the title, and the description. So the webinar name is for our personal reference. This is just what we are going to see in this webinar tab, and our customers will not be able to see this. So as an example, I can call this affiliate marketing webinar, and that's what I will personally see. And then for the webinar title, I could go in here and say how to make your first $10,000 online, because this is what my prospects or people in my webinar will see. We can then go down here and add in a webinar description. So we can enter that in right there. Then we can choose the language. And if you want to add any other presenters, you can enter in their name and email, and they will essentially get an email from you saying, hey, this webinar is about to go live, jump on because you're presenting. But once we have this set up, we can simply click on save right here. And it's then going to ask us, when do we want to schedule this webinar for? Because we selected the schedule option. So this is where we can choose from a single session, multiple sessions, or recurring series of sessions. For most webinars, this is going to be a single session and users will only register to one of the webinars. Multiple sessions is more for if you are doing a webinar series, because when people sign up, they will register to all of these. So if you're doing the same webinar again and again, you don't want people watching them every time because there's just no point. So that's if you have them pre-planned. And then we have recurring series of sessions. And once again, this is for an entire series for as long as it lasts. So you can add more in the future. But we just want to go for a single session. Then down here, we can select the date and time. So let's say that this is going to be tomorrow at 12 p.m. at lunchtime. And then we can select the time zone right here. So let's just set this as Eastern time in the US. We can add that right there. And now this session is going to be added. We can then go up and click on save. Then the last thing that we need to do is actually create and edit our registration page. So this is the page that we will send people to actually sign up for the webinar. And these are very easy to edit. So we want to choose from one of these templates. I don't recommend designing your own because these templates are already tested. But essentially the main difference that you need to decide is, do you want to show an introduction video to basically say, like, hey, this is the webinar, this is what you are going to learn, this is what you are going to get, sign up with the button below. Or do you want to not have a video and just have a page like this? So let's go for a video. They convert a lot better. We can click on customize, and then we can choose for the registration. Like in this section, how do people register? The bar is going to be the best. Then we can launch the builder right here. And all we have to do in this area, it's very easy. We just go up to the text that we want to edit, click on edit, and then in here, we can now change the text. So it already says free webinar, how to make your first $10,000 online. In here, we could maybe say how beginners are making their first 10K, and then we can edit the rest. You get the idea. For videos, we can go in, click on this edit button right here, and then we just paste in the YouTube URL. And that's how we can set up this page. We can also go down and like edit the colors right here. So the color of this form at the bottom, we can choose this. The pop-up form that asks people to enter their information, we can choose the one that we want to use. And then we can go ahead and choose the colors as well. We can also change the button color right here and the button text. And that is pretty much everything that we need to do. So once that page is set up, we can just save and exit, and then click on save again. And in here, we can now click on finish. And just like that, this webinar has now been created. So we can see the webinar right here, scheduled for Friday, the 20th of September. And then once this date and time comes around, to jump in, we just click on run a test, go to the presenters section, and then like I showed you earlier, we can put this webinar live. So that is the express configuration. As I said, I recommend doing the full configuration just for the first time. So let's go in and do that now. We can go full configuration and click on next. And then once again, we can choose if this is for right now or scheduled for later. This first basic settings section is going to be the same, where we just choose the name, the title, and the description. The only difference is that we can now upload a webinar thumbnail. So let's first of all start out with the name once again. So we can title this the exact same. And then for the thumbnail, we can just go in here and upload an image to this. So in this example, I will just use a YouTube thumbnail that I created. We can drop that in right there. Then we can click on save. In this next section, we can just set up webinar presenters if you want to add anybody else. And then down here, we have the streaming service. So essentially, when we are putting this live, do you want to broadcast this webinar on Facebook, on YouTube? But I highly recommend going for WebinarJam, as it just makes it a lot more exclusive and the feel is just a lot better, rather than having it on a free platform like YouTube or Facebook. Then we can click on save right here and go to next. In this next section, we have the schedules once again. So we have already covered this, but let's just go through and create a single session once again. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock EST, we can just add this and then save. And then this next section is registration, but this has a lot more detail. So the first thing that we can do is go in and customize this registration page once again. So we can click in and customize this. I've already showed you how to do this. We just click in and edit. So I'm not going to do this again. We can just save and exit and then save this. And the next thing that we have is the registration form fields. So what information does the person who wants to sign up to the webinar, what do they have to enter to get accepted? So in here, it's just going to be name and email by default. These are the ones that I recommend. I never recommend putting in a last name. It's just a little bit of a weird thing to ask for. And if you want to do SMS marketing, you can also ask people to enter their phone number, but this is going to drop submissions. So it really depends on your marketing strategy, whether you are more concerned about a lower conversion rate, but being able to do SMS marketing, or just having the highest sign-up rate possible. So I'm going to remove the phone number and then click on save. We then have auto subscription for future webinars. So this essentially means if we enable this, people will be able to auto subscribe to future webinars and they will receive emails when you are going live. They will be already signed up. So once again, this depends on your webinar strategy. For me, it's just a one-time webinar where I get people in, I sell them a product. There's no point in them coming back because it's just the same presentation. So let's click on save. Then we can do free or paid registrations. So this is interesting. This is if you want to charge the people who want to watch the webinar. Rather than selling a product, I mean, you could sell a product as well, but usually if you are doing a paid webinar, you're not selling a product. The webinar itself is the product. So if you want to set it up this way, we can charge a registration fee. We could just set this right here to, let's say, $500. And then all you would have to do is just enter in your PayPal right here, and that will allow people to pay for the webinar. We then have new registration notification. So this is if you want to receive notifications every time somebody signs up to your webinar. If you don't have a very big audience, this might be nice to have on. You will get an email every time somebody registers. But once you start getting hundreds of signups per day, it can be a little bit, not fun. So let's just go no notification and we can set this live. And then we have password protection. So this is interesting. I actually recommend to have this on, especially for a live webinar, because it keeps the feel of this is exclusive. So the password required, what we would do down here is we would just define a one master password. Rather than having unique passwords for every attendee, I don't recommend this. If we just set one master password, and maybe we can set this to like affiliate marketing 1, just like this. What we can do is everybody who signs up will receive an email with the login information. So we just basically tell them, this is your username, this is your password. So in the email, we basically give them the password, they enter that in, and as I say, it just adds to the exclusivity feel. We can then click on next. And in here, we have notifications. So before we set up the email gateway, if we go down to reminder notifications, I will show you what I mean about the password. So in reminder notifications, we can see right now they get a sign up email and they also get a last minute notification, which is an email 15 minutes before. So if we click into edit these, we can see we have the webinar room. So this is going to be a link to the webinar room. And then we have a password. Now, don't worry, you don't have to go through and actually type out the password or add in your link because these are shortcodes. So because they are in the brackets, essentially this is a piece of code and WebinarJam know just to replace this with what the password is. So although it says password right here, once it is actually sent out, because it has this code, it will automatically put your password and your link in. Same with the date, time, title, everything like this. So as I say, you can edit this if you want, but we have a sign up confirmation, a last minute notification. These are already typed out, so we don't really have to edit this. Then for the email gateway, if we click on edit, this is where we can choose between webinar mail. So all of our emails that we are sending out right here are by default going to be sent out by WebinarJam. Alternatively, if you want to add your own autoresponder, if you are already using an email autoresponder, well, we can set this up. Just make sure this is all saved. Then we can go up to profile And in integrations, this is where you can connect up the email marketing tool that you are going to use. So it has things like MailChimp, GetResponse, Aweber. Most of the big email marketing tools are going to be included. And essentially all we would do is integrate this, enter in your API key, and we can connect this up. For beginners, or if you don't have an email marketing autoresponder, webinar mail is absolutely fine. So we can just leave this there, and all of the emails are going to be sent through WebinarJam. Let's then click on next. And in here, this is just going to ask us to set up integrations. So the email integration, if we want to set this up, and also third-party tracking systems. So this is if you are running Google ads, Facebook ads, and any other type of ads, and you need more advanced tracking, you can set this all up right here. So if you are running ads, I assume that you have the knowledge to set up tracking. So I'm not going to go into setting up tracking in this video. We can just go back and next. And in here, we now have the thank you page. So in here, the first thing that we can set up is going to be the confirmation page. So when somebody enters in their information, they sign up to the webinar. This is the confirmation page that they get to confirm this. Now you can go down and you can upload your own page if you want to create this on your own website. This is not something I recommend. Just go with WebinarJam's default page, as this is more congruent with the website. It tells them they are registered, the date and time, and the link to the webinar. So we just leave that as it is. We can then go down, and if you want to survey your registrants on this screen, you can choose to set this up. So we have this confirmation screen, but before they get through to that, this is where you can essentially set up a survey. We can run a poll in here, so a poll with multiple answers, a poll allowing one answer. We can ask questions where people can type things in, and we can set that up right here. But I'm just going to say don't survey. Then finally, we can go to the thank you page design. And in here, this is going to be the thank you page, basically thanking people for signing up. So once again, we can add a video in here. We can choose to do this without. But the easiest way to do this is just to go in and click on customize. Make this the exact same. So as you saw earlier, I've chosen the same template that I did for my registration page. And all we would do in here is change this video. Instead of a video telling them, hey, sign up at this link below, instead we have a video here thanking them for signing up. So we would just go through, edit this, edit the video, and then in this section, it's going to show them the webinar that they signed up for, give them the webinar link, and show them the room password. From here, we can then save and exit and save, and then go to the next step. And in here, we can now set up the tools for when we are actually live. So once the webinar is live, we have people in the room. These are some of the settings that we can set up. So the first thing that we have is going to be an agenda. So this is essentially where you can add an agenda for your webinar, and you can essentially just have an agenda that you can see. So it would be, as it says, 5 minutes introduction, a brief overview. First block, a brief explanation of this. And you can just set this up if you want to have an agenda right here to keep you on track. We then have autoplay, and we can choose if we want to disable autoplay, meaning the video won't start until somebody clicks this, or we enable autoplay and this just plays, but it's muted. I recommend this top option to enable autoplay. So as soon as the webinar goes live, people see a picture, they know it's live, and they can just click to unmute. We then have a countdown page design. So this is on the page where people are waiting for the webinar. Let's say my webinar is at 12 p.m, right? People might start coming in at 11:57. They want to be there right for the start. And this is the page that we will take them to. So once again, we can choose from any of these pages. You can choose if you want to have a video in here. And this is essentially at the bottom, just going to show a countdown timer for how long until the webinar goes live. And then once it goes live, your webinar is going to show up. So we can edit that page and then save and exit and save. We then have the live room design. So how your webinar is actually going to look when you are live. We can essentially go down and just choose from one of these options right here. The main thing that we can really choose is going to be the color. So as you can see, we can change the outline. We can change the inside of the box right here and basically choose how this is going to look. We can choose if we want to display our logo. So if we want to turn this on, we just flick this on and upload our logo. So I will just go down and add my logo in right here. And then as you can see, this will show up at the top. We can also choose to display the title. So I can say how to make, you get the idea. It shows up right here. We can then choose to show the presenter details, add this in, choose a social media link. I don't recommend having either of these because it's just distractions. Like if you have social media, people might get distracted, click to your social media, and then forget about the webinar. Things like that happen. So we just choose the theme color. You get the idea. Click on save. Then for polls and quizzes, this is where we can pre-set up polls and quizzes that we want to ask in the webinar, rather than setting one up live, as I did at the start. So when I showed you at the start, when my webinar was live, we can set up a poll there, but you would have to sit there and type this out whilst you are live. A better idea is just to set this up now. We can go in, ask the poll question, enter the poll answers. We can set that up, and then it's just one click to actually send this to chat once we are in the webinar. Product offers is definitely something we want to set up now. So we can go in, we can add a new offer right here. And then in this section, we can enter the name of the offer headline, we can add an image. So as an example, let's just say I'm selling an ebook. I know this is something you wouldn't sell in a webinar, but this is just an example. I can upload an image of the ebook. Then we can say marketing secrets. This is my offer name. We can then add the headline right here. Choose the button above the text. Choose the button inside the text. So we could say like buy now. And then in here, we can add a button link and link to the sales page where you are selling your product. We can also go down and add scarcity to this. So we can choose how many units are left. I could say 10 units left. And then this is going to go down as people buy. And then we can also apply urgency to the offer right here. And how long we have this up for, we can say like 20 minutes left. Once we have all of that entered, we can go up and save. And now when we are live on the webinar, we can just do one click, put the offer live and allow people to buy this. For video injections, this is where we can add clips that we might want to play midway through the presentation. As it says, the system will seamlessly switch from your live video to the video that we upload and then back to live when the video is over. So if you want to add any videos in here to play throughout, once again, it's just one click, switches to the video and then switches back. We can set that up there. File handouts, if you want to add any files for people to download, we can add that. And then slide presentations, this is where we can upload a presentation that we want to make, and then we can present that live on the webinar. Let's click into next. And then the last section that we have is going to be this replay section. So this is essentially just enabling or disabling if you want people to be able to access replays of your webinar. Of course, we want to put this on. Then if we enable this, it opens up a few more settings. So essentially, do you want this to be a replica replay? Do you want to add a custom video replay? Or do you want to redirect to another video? The best is just a replica replay. Replay controls. So do you want people to be able to adjust the speed, skip through, pause, play, all of that? If you do, you can just turn this on. And as you can see, we have controls. But I don't recommend this. The point of a webinar is to watch all the way through. We then have, if you want to set an expiration date to the replay page, I don't recommend this. And do you want users to be able to submit questions in the replay? Once again, I don't recommend putting this on. From here, we can then go next. And as you can see, that webinar has now been created. So all we now have to do is go back to the dashboard and the fully set up webinar is going to be here. So once again, we can run a test. We can jump in. We can put the webinar live when we need to. But most importantly, to clone all of these settings that we just set up, we just click on clone right here. And this is going to create a clone of the webinar. So the only thing that we would need to change is the actual schedule. So we can go to schedules. Instead of tomorrow, let's edit this and say that this webinar instead is going to be on the 21st at the same time. Then we can check this off and save. All of the other settings are the same. So we can just go to finish. And then as you can see, I now have a webinar right here on Friday the 20th and my next webinar on Saturday the 21st with the exact same settings. So that is how you can set up and create your first webinar with WebinarJam. If you found this video valuable, All I ask is that when you do sign up to EverWebinar, you do so using the link in the description. Not only will that get you the 14-day trial for only $1, but I will earn a small commission on each sale at no extra cost to you. Either way, that is my WebinarJam tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed.